Okay, so next up in our series we've got our Shocker Solenoid Disassembly cleaning. Okay, so I've shown you how to get it off the gun, and so let's get to it. Parts you will need: it's lube, your precision screwdriver, the plate, and Q-tips. Again, I highly stress that you need to use Dow 33, because not only will it lubricate the solenoid, but the properties of Dow 33 itself will help to keep the O-rings in good shape, whereas honey lube or hater sauce or something like that will simply get the O-ring slippery, and that's great for just a little while until your O-rings die. Okay, so first things first, let's note the position of this mark right here. On Parker solenoids, which this is a Parker solenoid, black with silver, you'll see a small line right there. That, you'll need to remember, goes towards the top where all the holes are. Okay, so let's start from that end. You're going to take your small screwdriver and remove the two end cap screws, and then making sure not to lose the spring. There's a small spring in here. Remove the end cap. You'll see the spool section in there. Also note, in this spool section, you'll see that the one end has the point on it, and it's kind of, you'll see it, I think you can see it here in this camera. There's a point on this end that the spring will actually rest in. It keeps the spring lined up, and it just needs to be on this end. Also, yours might happen to stay inside the end cap. There's a small manifold gasket, a butterfly gasket, that actually seals the end cap and the spool section. Just take note that that's there and that needs to be lubricated and cleaned. But we'll get to the actual lubrication and cleaning later. So keep these on the plate, and then we will move to the back. From the back end, just do the exact same process. It'll unscrew once, slide out a little bit, and then you can do the other side the same way. Unscrew it once, slide it out a little bit, and then your spool housing will come right off, along with the secondary butterfly gasket. These two butterfly gaskets are the exact same and are what connects this pilot section to the spool section. The exact same butterfly gasket. Don't worry about getting them switched up. Next, we've got our pilot section, so we'll do the same thing. You got to pull out because it's also threaded, and get those threads caught, and then unscrew the screw all the way out. Once these screws are out, you'll see that you now have the major components of the solenoid. Okay, so this is where cleaning comes in. Here we've got the core itself. This is the tiny part that moves every time you pull the trigger. This is the thing you hear clicking. Now, there really is no maintenance for this. You just drop it in and it works. If you find anything wrong, any debris in there, you might want to replace it, possibly. You can contact Andy at ZDSPV, and he can hook you up with those. And that's pretty much it. Just make sure that this sealing face is clean, so you can take this core out, clean it off with the Q-tip. You can also make sure that your core face, there's a small rubber face, that black dot you see, the small rubber face, make sure it's clean so that it seals perfectly. Then you can move on to the pilot. Now you can see, obviously, that since air is always moving through here, that the lubricant will move around. So you just need to clean that off. There's a small rubber pilot seal right there. Again, it's black on black, so it might be hard to see. This ring you see is actually sealing the pilot to the actuator core. So make sure that's clean. You can clean off the pilot face, clean off the face of the pilot housing, and set that aside. As for the spool, we'll see here again that the spool can only go in one way, you just simply push it through with a Q-tip. Not too fast because you don't want to tear any O-rings. So we'll pull that out, and there it is. Now, remember what I said earlier. The spool itself has a pointed end and a flat end. The pointed end goes towards the end cap because the spring itself rests on that point. The flat end just needs to go towards the pilot because that's, well, the only other way it can go. So, we'll set that aside. Now, you can just take a Q-tip, kind of squeeze it through there, just to make sure you got a clean sealing surface for the spool. Wipe off the manifold face, where the butterfly gasket sits on both ends. And as far as reassembly, don't worry about which way the spool goes. It'll go either way fine. You can put the spool in one way. As long as the spool is in the correct way, the housing can go this way or that way. It doesn't matter. And that's the breakdown. We'll make sure the spool O-rings are clean. Just make sure that they're debris free. Take the end cap, make sure it's the same, nice clean sealing surface. And we will also make sure the butterfly gaskets have fresh lubricant. So we'll take our Dow 33, get a little bit of lube out of there. Get Dow 33, just a modest amount, and just rub them in between your fingers so that there's lube all over them. Now I like to start from the front back. So you'll take our solenoid, and what I like to do, this doesn't have to, you don't have to do this, but just the technique I like to use is get the back two sets of O-rings, so the back 4 sets of O-rings, nice and greasy, stick them in, like so, and once they are in, you can hold the spool and then grease the last set of O-rings. This way you've just got an even coat over all of them instead of fingerprint smudges on the last one. And that's it. And so then we will start from the front back. So we'll take our spool spring, stick it on the spool, press the spool in some. Take our spool manifold, stick it in the end cap, and then stick the end cap back on. Make the note to have the end cap line facing towards the holes. So we'll take our precision screwdriver and our 2 screws, screw the end cap back in. Now that that's over, we can go from there. Take our freshly lubed butterfly gasket, put it between the pilot and the spool itself. Situate that on there. Take a little bit of lube for the pilot housing seal, a little lowering